turn now to Aung, the Burmese dissident activist who was involved in the 1988 People's Uprising in Burma and has remained active outside of his country now for 20 years on behalf of freedom in Burma.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I think it's good afternoon now, actually. Before I talk about my personal story about the life of the dissident, I've been in exile out of Burma for 20 years. Now I'm residing in Thailand. I would like to remind you a little bit about my country, Burma, where there is the only living Nobel Peace Laureate, Aung San Suu Kyi, as my Cuban fellow dissident mentioned about. She's under detention for 13 years out of the past 18 years. And when we talk about Burma, we can't ignore about the numbers. We have at least 500,000 displaced people in the eastern part of Burma because of the ongoing military operations in our country. And in the Burma armed forces, there are 400,000, and at least almost 20% of them are child soldiers, the highest in the world. And we have every 1 out of 3 children are malnourished, where the military spending of the defense budget is much higher than combined health and education. It is the only country in the region which spent the defense budget more than the health and education combined budget. We have an infant mortality rate and under age of 5 mortality rate, second highest in Asia after Afghanistan. We have many more numbers that I could mention about later. But I was involved in the student-led uprising in 1988, where the successive military regimes in Burma, when they took power since 1962, and then in 88, people are so much fed up with the due to the mismanagement of the economy and suppressions in the country, and the millions of people took to the street. And I joined as one of the student organizers of the uprising and protests and demonstrations. And the regime responded to the peaceful demonstrations of the people around the country with bullets. And as many as 3,000 to 8,000 people died in the streets in the due course of 8 months. And what made me decided to become a dissident when I left my country, because I've seen people, my fellow demonstrators, activists, die in the street, and I thought that if I could continue to defy against them in the country, then I would also be one of my fellow activists who died or languished in prisons. So I left my country, and I spent about almost 3 years in the jungle, and where I have faced my fellow colleagues died because of diseases, malaria, in actions, fighting against the military soldiers. I myself, I have to tell you this story. I have to cross the minefield with the ethnic minority troops who are helping us, throughout our struggle. And the ethnic group which are following, accompanying rather, my people, my fellow students, they don't know where those landmines are laid, because those were laid by the other different factions against them. So I was thinking that this is the moment of my life. If I could make it across this landmine field, then I could make it through anything, in the future struggle of mine. And I made it, and here I am, still alive and working for the cause. This, however, I missed many meals, during the course of the struggle in the jungle. But all these sufferings are nothing, which compared to my fellow activists who are still working and struggling, defying against the military junta inside the country. There are more than 2,100 political prisoners still languishing inside the country, the prisons inside my country. The National League for Democracy, who is the main opposition party, which is led by the Aung San Suu Kyi, many of their leaders, members are still languishing in the prisons. In my country, I have to tell you that there are people, students, activists, the bloggers, the people who helped the victims of the cyclone Nagis, which struck Burma last year, and as many as 140,000 people died, as much as 2.5 million people been displaced. The people who helped those victims of the cyclone are also put in prisons because of their work to help the people. And the military regime never recognized the result of the elections, which they held in 1990, where the opposition party and the ethnic groups won 80% of the votes. 80% of the votes. But this result of the election was never been acknowledged, and that parliament has never been convened in my country. So what is it to do with my dissident life with these activities? Because we, as a coalition of the youth and student and former political prisoners, women, migrant workers, we are working to empower our fellow activists, especially inside the country, that the rights of the people cannot be ignored. The rights of the people, the students, the migrant workers, cannot be overpowered by the military, those who have power only with their guns. Without their guns, they're nothing. So we provide capacity building trainings, empower them, like for a student to reduce the bus fare, to go to their schools is their own right. Because in our country, the people cannot do anything. When we talk about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, almost all of the articles are not allowed for my country. It's called Burma. And so what are the key issues that we are focusing now? It's the most prior issues that we are focusing now is the release of the political prisoners. Without this process, we cannot achieve any national reconciliation in our country. We cannot have any dialogue with the military regime, which continue to oppress their own people. And in next year, there'll be elections, which is going to base on the regime unilaterally adopted constitution, which is without the consent of the people, which the people try to vote against the referendum. So, and also that the regime efforts to delay the international assistance when the cyclone Nagis hit the country, they purposely delayed the international community effort, which may also define as the crime against humanity. And the regime ongoing military operations in the eastern part of Burma can also design as a war crimes. So we are working on these issues, and one of the priorities. And one of the most important thing I would like to draw your attention here is that in a few days, in the end of this month, in April, there'll be a European Union common position on Burma will be adopted.